Good morning. As always, I'd like to thank Jay Gates for interpreting for us this morning. Thank you for being here, Jay, as always. We're going to start with the numbers. I talked to Greg Kesterman, the Commissioner of Health, this morning. So the breakdown is that we have 576 individuals in Hamilton County that have tested positive for COVID-19. 134 of those individuals have been hospitalized, and we have 24 deaths. We are also going to add another number to our chart, and it is the number of those who have recovered. Some of you have been asking for this, so that number is 107. So those are sobering numbers, I think. The delta for the positives between Monday and today are 41. The delta between the hospitalized is 22. And the delta for the deaths between today and Monday is 6. So I know there has been a lot of talk about reopening businesses lately, which has accelerated in the last week. But just as this talk has accelerated, so has the toll of the virus on our community. Since 1 week ago, hospitalizations have doubled, and tragically, so have deaths. These numbers show that we can't get ahead of ourselves. We have to continue the fight, and we can't let the promise of the future stop our efforts in the present to stop this disease from spreading. So let's remind ourselves and continue the hand washing, the safe distancing, with extreme caution. And before leaving our homes, let's continue to ask, is it worth the risk to ourselves and others? So today, we will talk about the future, but with our feet planted firmly in the present. We're going to hear from Jill MEYER, who is the CEO of the Cincinnati, USA Regional Chamber of Commerce, and Eric Kearney, who is the CEO of the African American Chamber of Commerce, both here in Hamilton County. And David KIRK is also joining us from DNK. He is a member of the African American Chamber. By the way, I am also a member of the African American Chamber, and as a result of that, I got a call a couple of weeks ago from a young man who was asking how I was doing, and I was a little thrown by the call. I don't get that call very often, and other than from my kids. And so I said, who are you with again? And he said, I'm with the African American Chamber, and we're checking in on all of our members. And I thought, well, it was lovely. And so I want to applaud both of the chambers. I know you're both doing this, for reaching out to their members in a really challenging time to just check in and see how people are doing and see what folks need. So before we get to that, I want to talk just a little bit about PPE. I want to give you an update on the distribution by the county for PPE and supplies. So the supplies have come in from the national stockpile, from purchasing, this county's purchasing department, and from donations. One resource distribution operation has been distributing N95 masks, surgical masks, gloves, gowns, eye protection, cleaning wipes, and hand sanitizer. All told, about 107 public and private organizations have received supplies. So I'm going to elaborate just a little bit on that. Before I do, when I talk about donations, and I talked to Nick Crosley, our EMA manager today, I asked him, where are the donations coming from? I do want to give a shout out and a thank you to those who have made donations to the effort. And so he talked to me about teachers, about businesses that do construction. Habitat for Humanity is one of the donors. EMA called around to every dentist in Hamilton County, and they too have donated supplies. And then he said just everyday residents have donated supplies, whether it is cleaning supplies or homemade masks. People have really stepped up and done what they can to make sure that our first responders and folks in the medical field have the supplies they need to stay safe. So big, huge shout out and thank you to those of you that have made those donations. So to give you an example of internally at the county, who's received some of the supplies, particularly the masks, Developmental Disability Services has gotten some, along with the Communication Center. JFS, Remember, they're the ones out in the field making sure kids are safe in our community. The Sheriff's Office, the SPCA through the Dog Warden's Office, and Juvenile Court. So these are the county's services that interface with the public and need that protective equipment. Also, 9 hospitals have received contributions primarily from the national stockpile that has been managed through the EMA. A number of fire and police departments, specifically 35 out of 38 fire and police departments throughout Hamilton County, have gotten supplies. A number of other healthcare providers like long-term care facilities and nursing homes. And then a number of human service organizations, and I want to again shout out to Gina Marsh. She's the director of the Human Services Chamber, and she has been in contact with Nick about the needs of some of her membership. And so, for example, some of those members and her membership includes the Greater Cincinnati Behavioral Health. So all of these folks are getting supplies from the stockpile managed by EMA, the YWCA, Wesley Care Services, those are the Meals on Wheels, Tender Mercies, Our Daily Bread, the Cat House, First Step Home, the Free Store Food Bank, Lighthouse, Goodwill, and more. So you can see that the organizations that need the supplies are asking for them and getting them because of the generosity and part of Hamilton County residents and some of the efforts by both the Health Collaborative and Emergency Management to make sure we have enough to distribute to those organizations. So while the county has been distributing these products, the Health Collaborative have also been distributing to the same organizations as well as others in Hamilton County. So as of last week, EMA has taken over as the only distribution site in Hamilton County to streamline that effort. We anticipate the need will continue to grow, and the number of groups served will also continue to grow. Hamilton County Purchasing and EMA will continue our operations throughout this crisis. So for those of you that are scratching your head right now and saying, oh, first of all, I wonder if I'm running an organization that needs some PPE, how can I tap in? Or if I'm someone that has extra masks, making homemade masks, or extra sanitizer, how do I contribute? I've got that number for you. It's the same number, by the way, in both cases. So the number, the hotline over at EMA is 263-8200. 263-8200 for either a request for supplies, or that is also the number to donate supplies. So again, thank you to Nick Crosley. Thank you to the Health Collaborative for helping in this effort. We're all in that together, and it seems to be going fairly well. And now for today's discussion on plans for the private sector. We've heard a lot about small businesses, some of the challenges that these small businesses face along with their employees, but also we want to talk about what's going on in this community to address some of those needs, and who better to have and to talk about that than Jill Meyer and Eric Kearney, and one of those small business owners. And so let's get to it. Jill Meyer, I believe, is first, and I'm going to let everybody know that all of these individuals are joining us virtually. We thank them for being here this morning with us. So Jill, we're going to turn it to you to talk about the efforts of the Chamber to address some of the current needs of small businesses in our community.
Thank you, Commissioner Dreihaus. And I want to start by thanking you for having these regular press conferences. I think these are incredibly helpful for certainly the community to really just keep the communications flowing, which we have learned very quickly how quickly things change. We just can't communicate too much to make sure that everybody knows the moving pieces and where they're headed. So thank you for Hamilton County stepping up in this important way. I do want to start with the premise. I have the great honor of leading regional D, and for those of you unfamiliar with it, there is a regional organization working across 60 counties in 3 states, and we have about 4,000 member businesses. Consistent with the national trends and really international trends, the majority of our members are small businesses. And so when we have, when the coronavirus pandemic and all of the restrictions came on board, you may imagine how quickly we had to pivot the work that we're doing at the Chamber to make sure that we're leading and helping to keep those businesses alive. I'd like to go big picture for a minute just to ask everybody to pause on the importance of business and in particular, small and mid-sized businesses in this current environment. When you go away, it impacts not just the businesses and not just those employees, but it impacts the entire community as we lose some of the in our community going forward. Just a point of reference, if you look at the unemployment claims, and I don't just for the Cincinnati region, but statewide, if you start with January 1 of this year and go through March 1 as your first tranche, if you compare the number of unemployment claims that we got in the 3 weeks following that, so March 21 through that first week of April or so, there was an increase nationally about 700%. 700% increase in unemployment claims during those two time periods. In Ohio, we saw an 800% increase in unemployment claims. Continue to say Indiana is close to 1,000% increase. That is startling and startling everybody. What it has done for us, and this data lags, just the ability to measure it lags a little bit, but we know the reality. We know people are out of work. And we know there are lots of opportunities, as Commissioner Dreihaus just referenced, the federal PPP monies and other resources are coming online from the federal government.
Hey, Jill. Jill, you are cutting up. Your feed is not great. I'm catching some of what you're saying, but not all of it. So I tell you what, I think we're going to call you. And I can literally hold the phone to the mic, or Bridget can, and see how my tech people have just gone crazy in the room. They're freaking out. But what? Yeah, let's go to Eric, and then Jill, we're going to work on trying to get a better feed from you. Eric Kearney, I see you on the screen. Let's hope that your feed is a little bit better. And then Jill, we're going to come back to you. So Eric, let's go with you.
Okay, good morning, Commissioner Dreihaus. Thank you so much for including us. The African American Chamber of Commerce greatly appreciates all the work that you're doing and all the other governmental entities during this time of crisis. I'm going to introduce David KIRK, who is the president of DNK Architects. They're an architecture firm in Cincinnati. It was founded in 1986. And David, maybe you can share kind of how business is going for you. I know that your firm has done a number of high-profile projects in Hamilton County. And if you could describe your experience in applying for the PPP and the EIDL.
Good morning, Eric, and good morning, all. As Eric has said, we are a firm that's been in operations for 30, 40 years. I also wanted to say we're also proud members of the African American Chamber and the Greater Cincinnati Regional Chamber. We have been involved, as Eric said, in a number of very large projects over the years, and proud to say that we feel we have contributed in significant ways to the built environment. As all would understand, this condition, crisis that we're in today has had a significant impact on all businesses, whether large or small. Specifically, DNK has found ourselves in a situation where we have had to work remotely. We started on March 24th with our employees working from their home environments. We have had consistent meetings with our staff on a let's say, every other day basis where we are able to discuss projects that they're working on. But at the same time, some of our more significant clients have shuttered or cut back on their work because they are also being impacted. And that has caused for us to have to rethink how we're going about sustaining our business. We have to date been able to keep all employees on payroll, but we don't know how long we're going to be able to do that because of the just general financial impact that causes to the business. Specifically and more directly answering Eric's questions, we have applied for both the disaster relief funds and the PPP fund. I will be very transparent to say that the disaster relief, we started on March 24th, and it took us until the first full week of April to get that application completed and through the system. That application and the system for the federal government and the SBA was constantly shutting down, or the processes were changing. And so we did get that completed, and it's in line, and we're waiting to hear back from the SBA and from our banker to know when that money will start to flow. On the PPP, it is similar that we have that document in place, and just as recent as yesterday, we received an email saying that our application had been approved and moved to the next phase. There are a number of phases in that application process, and we submitted the documents that they requested. And that in itself has been very labor intensive. We have had one person just dedicate their time to getting all that is necessary submitted to the SBA and to our banker. We are wanting to keep all of our staff who are professionals, architects and interior designers, and some engineers on staff, but we're also knowing that there may be a time when we have to release them in a way that, or furlough them in a way that would allow them to start to receive unemployment. That is not the route that we want to take, but as I said earlier, it's a business decision that has to be made. Other than that, we are still working. We do have clients that are moving forward with their project. But as I said earlier, some of the larger clients that we have pulled back and are waiting to see how the economy is going to respond over a longer period of time.
D&K, are you an essential service because you're in the construction industry?
There's debates about whether or not we're considered essential. We provide all the documentations for the construction or the contractors to be able to deliver their work. So we are continuing to work, but we're just not working from our physical location on Central Parkway.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I know that you're a member of both chambers, and greatly appreciate your membership in the African American Chamber of Commerce, and I'm sure that Jill thanks you for being a member of the Regional Chamber. I know that your firm is widely known throughout the area. Can you maybe talk a little bit about some of the construction firms and engineering firms that you interact with, and what you've heard from them?
Yes, we, work with, if I could say that over the years, we work with almost all of the major firms in the area, in the region. We have had conversations with some of them, and they are seeing some of the similar things that we're seeing. They are, responding to clients that are pulling back. We all think of our healthcare community as being very robust and strong, but in talking to them, they're telling us that because of the change in the environment from not being able to do their elective surgeries or to handle business as they normally would, they're having to pull back. And that's impacting some of the companies. I mean, we work with Triversity, we work with DAG Construction, we work with Turner, we work with Messer, to name a few. And we have found that each one of them are having to make business decisions similar to what I was describing when I talked about how DEK is approaching this situation, this crisis that we're in right now. They're all, managing, but this is impacting, unlike 2008, it is impacting in such a significant way at such a quick pace. So that's what we're hearing from our fellow business owners.
Just switch to some slides that I have about the African American Chamber of Commerce. And David, I think that some of the reporters may have questions for you later when Commissioner Dreihaus leads us in that phase. So this is just some quick things about what we're doing. We're still providing programming. We're doing it all remotely over Zoom primarily. Our MBAC office, which certifies businesses for the state of Ohio, is open, and we're also providing technical assistance for companies who need help in completing their PPP or completing their EIDL forms or other forms that they may have. As referenced earlier by Commissioner Dreihaus, we're doing well-being calls to all of our members. We're working with a diverse group of economic development and community organizations on various things to help businesses on this. We're also doing marketing for our members along those lines. We're providing information to our members through various websites or various things. And then our social media channels are very active in terms of some of the things that we're doing. So that gives you a quick overview of some of the things that the African American Chamber is doing on a top level way. So thank you very much, Commissioner, for allowing us this time.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you, David, for being on. It's really helpful to hear a real life story from somebody that's trying to work through the process. I do want to note that there is federal legislation moving through Congress right now related to more resources for the PPP. And so I think they recognize that not only is the money not getting out as quickly as they would like, there needs to be more of it because of the volume. So I just do want to note that we are also advocating, obviously, for resources for revenue replacement for local governments, but the PPP is probably the highest priority when it comes to that piece of legislation. So Jill, we're going to go back to you. I know Jill has moved to a different spot in her house. We're hoping she's going to get better, or rather we're going to get better reception. So let's try again, Jill. We did hear the beginning of what you were saying related to the membership at the Chamber, so please take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, and hopefully this plug-in is a cleaner one. I'm going to jump. I won't rehash everything where I was, but where I was in my comments at the point when I lost you all was talking about the vast increase in unemployment claims in Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, in our region. And we're looking at an increase in claims from the beginning of the year to the last 3 weeks, an increase of between 800 and 1,000%. And that is a remarkable number of people who are out of work right now. And the implications of so many businesses being closed is very real, not only for the businesses who can't deliver the services, and not only for the people who work there who now are looking at different options and hopefully tapping into the increased federal and state resources for unemployment, but they are the lifeblood of our communities. And so the imperative that we figure out how to get our businesses reopened in a responsible way is where we are spending a lot of our time. I will share with you that I have never been so proud of or in tune with the fact that the Cincinnati region business community is as resilient a landscape as you are going to find. And while everybody is figuring out ways to tap into these federal resources and all of the resources external from our immediate community, we have a lot of good things going on locally that I would share with you. I was just on a call with a number of CEOs, and one made the comment that this time period for us in the business community is being defined by collaboration and unity. And I would say that's true across the board, but from the business community standpoint, what we have done, I want to share with you two very particular things that are happening that will lead us through this crisis time period and strongly back into what is around the corner for all of us, because this COVID-19 will be behind us at some point, but before it's totally behind us, we will find ways to start reopening our economy, to get businesses reopened, and to get people back to work. I hope that all of you have heard of the Restart Task Force. Eric referenced before the work that the African American Chamber is doing with other groups. That's certainly one of the efforts that Eric and many of us are involved in. That's a group of CEOs, about 20 CEOs across the region, who have come together to say, we will get beyond this. We will begin now thinking about what follows, and we will prioritize how we can tee up that work and invest in that work to make sure we come back strongly. And at the same time, we recognize that we have to find ways to help businesses get through this right now. And so in the right now time period, I can share with you that the Restart Task Force will have 6 work streams. 2 of those are now up and running. And you won't be surprised to know that the first 2 are Restart Economic Development and Restart Commerce. And these are the teams who will continue pulling together. They started, you may have seen the wonderful collaboration of our banks, who bonded together to say, we will get as much PPP money into the Cincinnati region as is humanly and systematically possible. I was heartened to see the news yesterday that Cincinnati is number 6 on the list of gathering PPP dollars, with just over $10 billion brought into the state of Ohio. That is an important number, and it's critically important, as Commissioner Dreihaus referenced, that more money be put into the PPP program and that we continue to get our share. We are spending an immense amount of our time and effort in lobbying efforts to make sure that those federal resources do come to our community, and alongside the banks who have all come together to systematically make sure that we're taking care of as many businesses as we can possibly get into the system. What will follow with Restart as well in the near term is what we're calling responsible return. And that is a group of people looking at what does it take to restart our commerce and all of our economics in a responsible way that keeps health and safety in the center, but recognizes that we can't all stay home until the coronavirus vaccine is on the market. That's not practical, and that will kill an economy and create all sorts of other health and safety issues that we just we need to avoid getting that far. So stay tuned as that work begins to emerge, as well as additional work streams. Along with Restart, and I referenced this earlier, but what I want to share about the immediate work is what we're doing at the Cincinnati Chamber. So I had referenced earlier that we as a organization completely pivoted the work that we were doing A month, 6 weeks ago, we were working mostly with businesses who were trying to figure out how to attract and grow, keep their talent, and how to strategically grow their businesses through those types of retention and momentum growth initiatives. What a different world when we have completely pivoted to say we're going to focus on two things. One, how do we keep businesses alive? And two, how do we put people to work? And so over the last month, we have done a number of different moves. We have shelved some of our previous work for now, but we have upstarted a number of resources and work streams that are designed specifically to do both of those things. And I would encourage everyone who is interested to look at cincinnati-chamber.com. We have an entire new, just a resource that includes everything from how to apply to the PPP to what we launched just yesterday, which are playbooks for particular businesses, particular industries to start ramping up and figure out not only how to get access to the SBA monies, but how they can do other financial and resource options. So there are playbooks posted right now for bars and restaurants, playbook posted for arts and entertainment organizations, and there are a number of additional industry playbooks on our website listed that will be coming out in the coming days. But there is an entire business center to help businesses navigate the COVID-19 challenges now, and we are at the same time keeping a foot into what's ahead. What we do know is that consumer behavior will change. We will emerge from the crisis, but we will emerge into a very different economy and a very different life, and people with very different behaviors, expectations, and willingness. And so helping business anticipate what is around the corner once their business is back. What does it look like, and how do they navigate this new normal that we will all be sharing together? Two quick last points that I would throw out. One, if you think about how much impact this is on local economy, there are about 126,000 small businesses in our region. And if you zero in on some of the industries that are most directly impacted by this pandemic, there are about 46,000 of those businesses who are most directly impacted, and with an estimate of about $250 million in immediate need to keep them afloat. That is a staggering number. It's staggering any way you slice it. But those are the kinds of realities that David and others are trying to work through to keep their businesses going, and we are pulling out every stop we can to try to help that happen. And then the last thing I'd say is to resort back to Restart. The Restart effort is really designed to be a community-wide effort. It is certainly being led by some of the prominent CEOs in town, but it involves government, it involves social services, it involves every piece of our landscape, because it must. If we're going to come out of this in a very strong economic way, everybody has to be rowing together. And so the premise of Restart is to define action, leadership, and collaboration. And by organizing in that way, in a proactive manner as we have, we do feel confident that the tremendous momentum that we had just a month ago will come back, and it will come back because we across the community are already strategically working on what that looks like and how to enable our businesses to get back to work. Thank you, Commissioner, for including me in the conversation today.
Thank you, and thank you again to all three of you for being with us virtually. We really appreciate it. It's been very, very helpful information, particularly from those who are trying to plug into those federal resources and to what's happening locally. I need to clarify something. So evidently, while the three of you have been talking, EMA has gotten some calls related to PPE, the personal protective equipment. So to be clear, and maybe I wasn't clear enough, the distribution of these supplies is going to organizations that are on the front lines doing work with seniors, doing work with kids. And so the Emergency Management Agency is not distributing these supplies to individuals. They are distributing the supplies to hospitals, to first responders, and to organizations on the front line. So I regret if I wasn't clear enough. So if you would like to donate, please call that number. If you are in need of supplies, the Emergency Management Agency, you do have to qualify and be one of these frontline organizations or hospitals. So that is not the hotline for you. So I apologize if I wasn't clear on that point. Also, lastly, I just want to mention that, related to small businesses, think about some of the industries that are really taking a hit right now. I mean, so many are, but the hospitality industry, when you think of restaurants and bars, we all know this intuitively, that they are really struggling. I think many of us are trying to help by doing some carry out, especially over the weekends, buying gift cards. And remember, a couple weeks ago, I mentioned that 3CDC had this program where if you bought a gift card, say for $100, and you sent them a picture of your receipt, then they would buy a gift card for $100 from somewhere else, and you would get that gift card as well. Well, it was a super popular program, and so I think within like 24 hours, they ran through the money that had been donated generously, and so they are now trying to bring more money into this project. And so I will let you know when it's back up and running. I'll let you know within a short period of time, because I suspect that's going to happen again. I mean, I went to Coffee Emporium, and by the time I got back to my office, the money was gone. So that's the good news, right? The people want to do this. But I'll let you know. I'll call Steve Leeper and let you know if that opportunity presents itself again. So with that, Bridget, are there any questions?
Local 12 has the first question. Megan Mongello, for you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Hi, Denise. Megan Mongello here. I was on the Ohio Department of Health website yesterday, and according to their website in Hamilton County, as of Saturday, there were 574 positive cases in Hamilton County, and that would mean in 5 days we've only had an increase of 2 cases here in Hamilton. Numbers are accurate, so that's the first question. And why not information instead of 7 days ago?
So you're cutting a little bit in and out, but I will reiterate that I talked to Greg Kesterman, the Commissioner of Health, this morning. And so the numbers that I give you are countywide numbers. So they include the county and the city and the other health departments. So 576 is the number that have tested positive, 134 in the hospital, 24 deaths. Let me provide a caveat for the recovered. So the recovered number of 107 is for Hamilton County only. And so that does not include the city of Cincinnati, Norwood, and Springdale, from my understanding. But those other numbers are all inclusive.
So my question was, on Saturday, we only had 574 cases. And I say that because in 5 days, there's only been an increase of 2. So I guess that is my question, if we've started to flatten out at all, since in 5 days we've only had 2 new cases.
I can go back through my notes, but I am not sure that number is accurate. But let me talk broadly about your question, which is, yes, we are still seeing an increase, but also, yes, we are seeing a flattening of the curve. And so the exponential growth that we saw in the early modeling was straight up. I mean, that was like a very steep bell curve. Right now, we are seeing a much more moderate increase. And so, yes, we are flattening the curve, and everyone in this community is to be applauded for washing their hands, staying home, or keeping safe when they go out with safe distancing. So we are seeing a flattening of the curve, but the numbers continue to increase. I can check my numbers, but I am very confident in the number that I'm getting from the health commissioner as of this morning, and the numbers I've previously reported. I call the health commissioner every day to get the numbers, so I'm very confident in the numbers. Bridget?
Next, we have Chris Wederick. He has a couple questions for Jill.
Morning, Jill. I got a couple questions. I'll go one at a time, though. Did I hear you say where the Cincinnati metro area ranks specifically in terms of PPP? I know the state is 6 overall in the country, but I thought you mentioned something, but I didn't understand it quite as well as maybe I should have.
You did not. We don't have the numbers. I'm not sure if we'll get them, but we do not have the numbers of just the Cincinnati metro. I referenced Ohio being number 6 on that list with north of 10 billion.
Okay, great. You also mentioned one of the streams that the Restart Committee will be working on is what a responsible return looks like. Have they reached any kind of initial conclusions on that, and what does that look like as far as you're concerned at this point?
I can tell you that there is a group of people working actively on it as we speak. No initial conclusions, but we're hoping we have some very soon, with the intention to be, the premise starting there is we have a landscape here economically that, as you know, is diverse. We have lots of different types of businesses that will have lots of different types of needs and requirements to restart business. So what it looks like for employees to go back to work in an office setting is very different than what it looks like to go back to work in a restaurant setting, for example. And if you're patrons of restaurants or movie theaters or hospitals or any of the other places, what are the different moving pieces that we need to think through to say there are ways for us to responsibly get back, but for that to happen, all businesses are going to have to recognize what their particular needs are and how to protect both their employees and members of the public if they're coming in. I would anticipate, Chris, that within the next week we will have some guidelines and we'll see some specifics and pieces of a solid plan at least beginning to unroll.
Okay, and last question. There's kind of an underlying current of doubt about the state's numbers. They had projected X number of cases, X number of deaths. Early on, those numbers have kind of not come to pass, and there's a kind of a strong vocal, maybe minority of people saying, well, look, they were completely wrong about this. How much are you hearing comments like that from businesses, and do you feel that there's pressure given that to reopen, more quickly, coming from the grassroots, should we say?
I would answer the question just a little bit differently because I've seen many of the critics, some of them armchair critics and some of them qualified critics, questioning how the models were done and why the numbers were what they were. What I'm hearing mostly is not people questioning the projections or the health officials. More so what I'm hearing from businesses is, look, for whatever the reason, it looks like we are flattening the curve. We need to get back to business somehow. And thank goodness Armageddon didn't happen and we are flattening the curve, but it gives us confidence that there are ways and that when we are all responsible that we can keep this thing in check. So now is the time to restart our economy, and let's not wait another month, and let's not wait on government officials to tell us when we're allowed. Let's show them that we are responsible and we can appreciate the flattening of the curve. Whether, I'm sure it was impacted because we've all stayed home and followed the guidelines, but the reality is there are things that we now are educated and know we can do to keep it flat. So it's more the practical implications of the flattened curve and less the criticism of what the data and modeling showed on the front side.
Do you think that'll occur? Sorry.
Eric, to respond to that too, and what he's hearing from his membership.
Okay. You mean in terms of? I'm sorry, Chris.
What you're hearing from the businesses that you represent, as far as the timing on when those businesses can reopen, and any frustration they have. I'm going to speak to the flattening the curve in a minute, but what are you hearing on the ground, Eric?
Oh, yeah. I mean, people are very anxious. I mean, restaurateurs, as Jill mentioned, also barbers and beauticians are going absolutely crazy because that's the way they eat, just to be very blunt about it. So there's a lot of angst and people want to jump back in. I would say in terms of industries, and I've got a spreadsheet on Monday.com about it. There's construction seems to be doing well. Insurance agencies seem to be doing well. But other types of service businesses like consulting don't appear to be doing doing very well. Automotive, people who do car repairs are really hurting, obviously hoteliers. So those types of industries are really suffering a great deal.
You. And Chris, let me just weigh in here, is because all along we have been taking the advice from our health community, the health commissioner at the state level, the health commissioner locally. I think that's what we needed to do. It is what we continue to need to do. And so as Jill mentioned, we're flattening the curve because of the behaviors in this community. I mean, there's just no question about it. So were the predictions correct? How would we know? We cannot prove a negative. You can't prove a negative. And so thank God we are not seeing the growth in the numbers that was predicted had we not done anything in this community. So as I've said, I mean, I think we're crushing it in Hamilton County. Our numbers are still going up, but they are not going up at the rate that was predicted. And so it's a difficult thing to understand, but I do think we need to continue, from my perspective, to take the advice of the health commissioner. I feel like the governor is in the same boat, and that's where we take our lead out of respect for those that understand this better than any of the rest of us.
Thank you, Denise. Thanks, everybody. One more question for Jill. Do you see that kind of what you said about we want to show the government that we will be responsible in reopening? Do you see that you know, the chamber and the businesses that it represents will push for that at the beginning of May, or what do you think the timetable is for that?
I'm not at liberty to give you a timetable right now, but yes, I can tell you there are already active conversations going on with elected officials at the state level, letting them understand that we have some serious expertise here, from health practices to business to just the realities, and that we intend to serve up what this can and should look like, and we're going to bring it to them. You know, they're not experts on how businesses can operate. They're not experts on the economy. Those of us in that space are bringing that information to them, and it is our hope and expectation that that conversation will go well. And I can't say that they're going to fall in line behind us and do everything that we want to have happen, but I do know that they respect the group that is bringing the recommendations to them, and we will look forward to continuing to work through it together, but by sharing in a very strong way what a return to economics looks like while being safe and minding the health restriction.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Comes from Jay Hanselman for you, Jill.
Actually, this could be for both Jill and Eric if you want. We're talking about the reopening, and I've read some places that some businesses say, look, we've got to get this right the first time because we can't handle a reopening and then another shutdown and a second reopening. So how much does that play into this first reopening? And what are you hearing from folks about that?
Eric, do you want to go first on that one?
I'm not hearing anything about a second reopening or getting it right the first time. I'm just hearing people want it open as quickly as safely as possible. That's what I have heard.
And Jay, I would add on that we are mindful as we look at countries who reopened, maybe people weren't being as safe, and then they had a second wave, and then they had to go back to that. There is no appetite for and no desire to have to do this twice. And so I think that is why Eric even said it in his comments, there is interest in a single reopening and being safe about it. And there is a lot of energy right now around, of course, there's safety that has to be a part of it, and there's commerce that has to start happening, and it's a very careful balance, but everybody is focused on getting it right this first time because a second wave of this would be a tough hurdle.
That seems to conclude our questions.
And I just want to jump onto that real quick. You know, obviously this is a balancing act, all of which, you know, the commerce piece, the public health piece, you know, are very important, and we need to create a reasonable balance here. And I think that's the challenge, because we're in uncharted territory. None of us know how this is all going to play out. We just have never been in this space before. And so I applaud everyone that joined David, Eric, and Jill this morning for helping round out the conversation related to the community response to COVID-19, what we can do to help businesses, what these organizations are doing to be continued resources during this challenge, because we're all in it together, and we're going to make it through. Where there's some